Thank you very much. And yes, I am the piece between you and your cocktail. So I will obviously, motor along. But thank you very much to the Times Hire. It's really very nice to be here talking to you. And I think if we get things moving, I'm looking at developing a niche and building a vision and looking at the brand. And I'm going to draw on some of the examples from Plymouth. And I think it's very clear that we've been talking about this morning and this afternoon about the idea of the date on your birth certificate, that older is better, of course. Well, that's what they used to say. But I think we're challenging that. And I think very much so since the Times Hire has really shone the spotlight on excellence wherever it's found. There is a real sense that whatever the date on your birth certificate, you can emerge as an excellent university. And I think we're seeing, and we've heard today, learning opportunities from each other about the emergence of this ambitious group of young universities and how we've done it and how we are doing it, and the ability to be very generous in sharing our stories with each other. So there is a saying that the first man gets the oyster and the second man gets the shell, which is the idea that if you come in second, you're second best. But I'm actually allergic to seafood, but I do like pearls. And my approach to this is that emerging maybe a little bit later on is you're just in prime position to secure that pearl and have that pearl be a global position. But we talked, and I think David talked a little bit about that leadership challenge. Where's this moving forward? Okay. So the leadership challenge, I think, is to elaborate a vision for the future that's obviously better than the now, and to get a sense that you want to use that vision to inspire people, to inspire them to be their best self, to drive the innovation that we've all been saying is very prized. And there's a real sense that leadership challenge is very real for us as young universities. And I think before we go on and talk about some of those challenges, we need to get a sense of that. Just take a breather. We've had a busy day, and just remind yourself that what universities do matters hugely. Remind ourselves of our role as custodians and the work that we do to help talent express itself in society is hugely important. To help ideas take form and create jobs, work, knowledge is hugely important. To advance and apply knowledge. So just take a moment when times are difficult and sometimes crazy in our world, and just remind yourself that what you do matters. And what we do as young universities matters hugely. So as we take that sense of our purpose, as we focus on our activities, it's really important that as we elaborate our sense of journey, is that we are making choices. We have the power to make those choices. And strategy, and our strategy as universities, is about making choices. Choices about the kind of university you wish to be. What does good look like for you? What does excellent look like? You choose, and your strategy is a public expression of your choices. And as we look at those choices, it's about thinking they're not happening in a vacuum. They're happening in a sector, a global sector, where the choices you are making are impacted by a whole range of different activities, whether it's our expectations of our students, our research funders, whether it's technological challenges. There are lots of things happening in your space that influence your choices, but your choices are your own, and you will be driven, I think, by some of those innovative and disruptive forces. And I don't know why we feel that the emergence of new world-leading institutions is strange. And I want to work through with you that disruption as a force for innovation is a good thing, and it is leading to the kinds of institutions we've been describing today. There's a British educationalist, Sir Michael Barber, who talks about, don't think about competing one university on another. Think about all the things that are going on inside your university, every single pillar of your university being something that is up for another provider to offer in a different way. And I think there's a real sense, and we've seen this particularly in the UK recently, is the impact of some of these disruptive forces on our sector. And we've moved from a kind of grant-based culture where the grant check turned up all the time, it always cashed out, into a fees-based structure. And we did that very rapidly over a period of kind of a year, more or less. And we're now moving to genuinely understand and articulate that we are earning income when we deliver value. And that is an entirely new proposition. But I think it's a proposition as young universities that we understand that income is earned by delivering value. I think that's something to hold on to. Okay, I want to walk through a little bit with you the idea of disruption. I want to go back. And I want to kind of position for you that we are celebrating young universities as something new, but we are quite comfortable that other sectors disrupt. So the telecoms industry, the retail industry is always emerging new players who can attain global presence. And so if we look at what happens in other sectors, we will get a window, an insight into what will happen and is happening in our own sector. So if we look at those new sectors, we will see, and this is what's happening when sectors disrupt, this is a generic offer, we will see new entrants emerging and coming in. And here we are, we're standing as young universities, loud and proud, alongside the best of the rest. And that sense of new entrants emerging, a sense of new sources of funding, and we heard about some of those in the last speaker. So there's a real sense that this disruption that's happening in our world is common in other sectors. We can learn from other sectors. And I want to share with you two little case studies where we as Plymouth University drew some inspiration from some other sectors. So the first one is a telecoms sector. That's O2. It's a provider of It's a provider of telecoms and mobile services. And in their world of telecoms, what was happening was commoditization of the offer. So instead of thinking, how can we race to the bottom on a pricing war, they actually stood back and said, can we not race to the bottom on a pricing war? Can we really think about the experience of our customers? And can we draw the experience of our customers to be our differentiator? And we took, for us, some inspiration from that case study to think, can we focus not on the headline pricing and the commoditization that's going on in the higher education sector? Can we think about the experience of our students, a transformational experience with our students? And can that be something that's very much part of our brand, our distinctive offer? And can we also stand back and say, let's not follow and chase some of these fairly historic rankings. Can we do the right thing for us, for our mission, for our university, for our city, for our region? And can we know, can we believe that rankings will catch up with us? And that's why I'm so heartened to be alongside Phil, who is looking at a dynamic group of young universities doing the right things and the rankings catching up with them. That's a very powerful experience for me. The second case study is from retail. It's Burberry. It might be a brand that you know. And actually what they did was to understand, in a retail sector that was disrupting, was to understand who they were, very powerfully understand the heritage of their organization. and to recognise that how you experience Burberry, their brand, is something that is very precious and you need to be a custodian of. And I think in our thinking, as we were thinking about Plymouth University's story, we wanted to understand who we were, what was in our DNA. We started out back in 1862 as a school of navigation, and we were educating and training seafarers. We stand today in 2014 educating and training seafarers. We have moved forward with that heritage into new horizons around marine conservation, marine energy, maritime, all sorts of things. But that heritage was something we needed to express to ourselves and feel comfortable and confident about who we were, who we are. We also recognised that we had a very disparate and scattered brand offer, loads of different logos, loads of different sub-brands, and we wanted to be really clear how you experience Plymouth. There'll be one brand, and we must be careful with our brand and understand how we can protect it and articulate that very powerfully. So there's a real sense that sense of vision, expressing a compelling vision, making choices on your own terms, your strategy, your choices, understanding your brand, understanding your distinctiveness. And I want to kind of weave those in through Plymouth's story. I want to show you first an inspirational photograph of Plymouth Hoe. This is where the Mayflower sailed in 1620, coming up to 400 years of that. And that long white box on Plymouth Hoe, which is the largest natural amphitheatre in the world, is where my students graduate in that inspirational setting. And that's where we kind of come to celebrate their transformational journey and launch them out into the world as Plymouth graduates. So we were the first university if you came the long way up England. So we're over in the southwest corner. We cover 3 large counties, a rural area. Plymouth itself is quite an urban centre, quite high levels of deprivation, very little formal industry, but lots of small and medium-sized enterprises, lots of social enterprises, lots of creativity. And we are blessed, I think, with a geography and an environment that inspires us. We looked at our natural assets of place. We looked at the fact we were a university, we are a university. We do 2 things. We do teaching and we do research. But the choices we made about our strategy were very powerful. When I joined the institution in 2008, we elaborated a vision for the institution, which was to say, let us take teaching and research, but let us take both of those pillars of our institution and express them through the lens of enterprise. Let's look at our teaching and our research, our teaching and learning, our research innovation, but let's use the lens of enterprise to connect our teaching, to connect our research deeply and powerfully with society, with business, with the professions, with community in a way that is transformational. So that was our sense of vision, a compelling vision. We were inspired by this academic paper, which is called Reconceptualizing the Academy. That paper presents the enterprise axis, that innovation axis, not as a third leg to teaching and research, but actually the lens through which you can look at your teaching, you can look at your research, and I would commend it to you. So Plymouth University's vision was to be the enterprise university. Those of you who've worked in universities a long time, as I have, will know the kinds of level of heated debate we had about whether we would be an enterprise university or the enterprise university. And that was a very powerful and still rankles in the institution. But we decided to be bold and to be the enterprise university. And that's what we set our stall out to be. And we wanted to express that, to be transformational, to talk about advancing knowledge but transforming lives through education and research. And that's the mission of the institution. So the distinctiveness, the kinds of choices we made around strategy was not to look at students as customers and to think of a transactional engagement with our students, but to think of our students as partners for life with us as an institution, and to recognise their innovation, the way they can drive innovation in our organisation, to recognise their voice with us and alongside us for life. We also wanted to deeply engage our staff and recognise the kind of discretionary effort that they can uplift when they feel they're doing meaningful, purposeful work that is really important. And I think we recognised, as other institutions have spoken today, that we had a social responsibility to drive place-making. We wanted to take forward the civic responsibilities, but to drive place in terms of social prosperity and economic prosperity. Now, we've heard a lot about taking the 1% of the top 1% of students or the top 2% of students. Plymouth University is open to talent wherever it sits. So irrespective of age or background or ability to pay or anything else. And so we talk about our distinctiveness being off the curve, that we do have a very high research offer. 80% of our research is internationally accredited and relevant, but we are also open to talent from a wide and diverse group. And I think that was that off-the-curve positioning where you often have high research-intensive institutions who are excluding the majority of students, or you have wide access gate universities that really don't offer a research-informed curriculum, and we positioned ourselves to do and be off the curve. So as we move through our strategy, it is tired, this machine. Unlike my audience, I know. That's it. So as we move through our strategy, we position that strategy and we published a strategy at a time in the UK which was turbulent and chaotic, and nobody really knew what was happening next. But we had made choices, and we published our strategy to be a long-term strategy all the way out to 2020, when we published that in 2012. It was a 2020 strategy, a confident, bold statement around who we were and where we were going. And it had some important ambitions in it. We talk about 4 ambitions, and we looked through those ambitions, research and teaching, but also around sustainability. Number 1, Green University. The sustainability of our organisation had to feed through everything that we did, as well as social and widening participation. So students as partners, I've mentioned. We see students as a force for innovation. We are delivering leaders of tomorrow, global citizens, and students and their voices do shape our institution. We also wanted to make sure that we did some thinking about who on earth are the students of tomorrow, these digital citizens who are tracing their alphabets on iPads are coming to us in a few years' time. So can we do some deep thinking about our pedagogic approaches and our curriculum approaches about who are these students of tomorrow and where are they positioned now? We also wanted to talk about our staff in a way that was important. We recognised the powerful way in which there is a war for talent. We recognise that our mission and brand are carried by our staff, and that the university mission had to bind staff to deliver this higher purpose. And there was a real sense of that why you come to work, to transform lives through education and research, had to drive people to innovate because they wanted to. It had to drive people to engage with delivering the strategy. And I think when we've done some pulse surveys and our recent staff survey, I'll just show you a couple of stats. There was a real sense that people got it. People were proud to work for the institution. They understood how their bit, whether it's small or large, contributed to the overall delivery of the university strategy. And that's quite unusual, I think, in universities, where we often have so many silos that we never look up and understand that we work with a university. And I think in terms of that discretionary effort, if we take very seriously that staff engagement agenda, was that people will uplift for you up to 16% extra effort when they feel they are engaged in meaningful work. So that means your staff pay bill, you are getting 16% more staff for the same pay bill, if you want to be cynical about it. Okay, moving on. The agenda around our brand has taken us into, I think, really genuinely a partnership model. And I think we have come fairly late to the international game, but we've come late and we are really delivering on long-term partnerships where we enjoy shared values. So we're very discriminating about our partnerships internationally because we want to connect for the long term. We want to connect on axes of excellence, and we want to connect with a whole range of partners who share the same value set. And that's been a very powerful construct for us in terms of our decision making. So in terms of the kinds of folk we work with, it's taken us to elaborate all sorts of relationships. But I think the thing I wanted to mention to you was the way that we've positioned our brand. The top right-hand corner, orange blob, which I have made it my mission to exercise from the university campus. And it's a nondescript, underconfident, southwest-facing, you can't even read where Plymouth is on that blob. And we went through a very deliberate exercise to express our brand values. And we worked with two companies who happened to be startup companies of our own students who'd set up their own branding and PR agencies. And they came together in a unique collaboration. And they worked with us for probably about 18 months to grow a solution with us. And they came back with the no logo university, and the word with. And that very simple word with has allowed us to be very democratic about how you express your flavor, whether it's enterprise or connect or spirited or whatever it happens to be. So the democracy of words is in there. We can sit alongside other brands in a way that's respectful of that partnership rather than feeling we have to subsume a partner. So that sense of rebranding has been very important, and recognizing how we use our brand. Okay, recognizing some timing, I just want to whiz through. We've heard a lot about the importance of world-class research. We have focused very deliberately around key themes, and you heard the importance of that from York earlier. So recognizing where you can be excellent and driving those themes. The other area I think that's been hugely powerful for us is to recognize the importance and the centrality of connecting a university with the business community and making the university at the heart of an ecosystem for innovation and for enterprise. And so we have taken it upon ourselves as part of our mission to connect all the dots around enterprise and innovation, working from incubation centres based on campus, startup and entrepreneurship centres based on campus, a whole range of regional innovation centres, our own science park, and connecting those in a very powerful way in terms of accelerating growth and driving and creating jobs, high quality jobs across 3 different counties. Okay, so has it been worth it? Obviously, we're here today as one of the top 100 universities under 50, but we also were very privileged to win the Queen's Anniversary Prize for Higher Education, which is the highest national honour that can be bestowed in the UK. And I think it's brought us a real sense of arrival, actually a sense of journey, because I think we're still journeying hard. But the choices we made around our brand have been transformational for us as an institution. I mentioned earlier that we took our responsibility as an institution very seriously to the place where we exist. And there's a lot of discussion now about the role of anchor institutions, and Plymouth is doing a lot of work to help elaborate what do we mean by anchor institutions. And I was fascinated by the discussion around how do we measure delivery against that agenda. One of the things that we have found is that the strategic benefits that we have secured by being decisive, by being ambitious, by making choices for the long term have been compelling. And we did a piece of work that I'm just going to mention to you because it's relevant to maybe a call to action later, which is that we've looked at the kind of journey that other institutions are making and whether there is a move in the global sector, but we did this piece of work in the UK to see whether institutions are moving to become more distinctive, more dynamic in terms of the choices and not trying to be everything to all people. We did a piece of work that mapped the kinds of axes of distinctiveness across the sector, and we found a whole range of different flavors of university. And we found really that institutions were moving to become more distinctive. So from a sort of central, highly competitive red ocean of sameness, they were moving out to this blue, calm ocean where they were in control of that distinctive brand space. So we've seen a lot of people move to an enterprise space or an art space or a boutique space or a professional space. And that is something in the UK that we followed up on that would be fascinating to explore more deeply among the group of young universities and indeed globally. Okay, to finish up then, I want to talk about our role as an institution that is moving from this ivory tower, if you like, to a connected institution, to an institution that is really inclusive, to an institution that's on a journey from good to great. And Jim Collins, if you know his book, there is a real sense that can you define great on your own terms? Can you be ruthless in building the momentum and building the brand? And can you recognize the leadership opportunities and the capacity to deliver on that? We heard from Jamil earlier about race for excellence is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think that's absolutely true. And we've also heard some hints and tips from all speakers about how you move from A to B. And I just want to leave you with a reminder that what we do as universities matters. It matters hugely. And I want to leave you with a quote that I find quite inspirational. It's a watery quote because Plymouth is a marine city. And so I'll leave you read that, but it gives you a sense of how you can help inspire the people in your institution to deliver on excellence on your terms. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Wendy, for a really fitting final presentation. That's given us a lot of food for thought. The last two presentations were really wonderfully energetic. I know it's the end of a long day, but we do still have some time for some questions. I think it's a good opportunity to ask them, and then we'll move on to more informal conversations later. But does anyone have a question? Well, I'm going to use my chair's privilege yet again and ask Wendy something that I think is a really interesting challenge for universities, maybe less so for new universities, but the importance of branding. I think in many higher education institutions, branding is seen as somehow beneath the faculty. It's something that they don't want to get mixed up in. It's what beer companies and chocolate bar people do, not universities. But there's a growing realization that actually having a clear brand is a really important part of your overall message and actually bringing the staff behind what you're doing. I mean, can you talk a little bit about getting the staff behind you in terms of rebranding? And
I think we didn't start out with saying, let's do rebranding, because I think people simply go to, well, how much is this going to cost to change the signs? What we did do was spend a lot of time asking staff what they cared about and getting them to slowly over a period of time elaborate what the values of the institution were about. And so we went through really just elaborating the values of the institution. And then we basically said, okay, how does the brand that we're using, does it portray the values that we've all collectively said we hold dear? And the answer was absolutely not, which was the right answer, in my view, that the orange blob didn't say anything. And so we went through then a process to say, how might we better articulate who we are and what we're about? So it was a process which started with, who are we? What are our values as an institution? How might we portray those values? And I think the solution that emerged from the agencies we worked with, the fact that they were our ex-graduates who had set up their own businesses, there was a real passion to work with us to elaborate the brand values and to come back with just simply that word with our students, with our place, with our partners, with and alongside others was a very powerful construct for us. So I think if we'd started with let's do rebranding, it would have been seen as a cynical management ploy. The fact that we started with the who are we, what do we care about, and then emerged with a solution was the way that worked for us.
we mustn't be too disparaging about orange when, of course,
we're orange.
But actually, I mean, you have a very powerful brand as well. It seems extremely striking. Did you go through that process?
We did, and just a couple of comments. When I first became president, all we had in terms of marketing was an Office of News Services, 3 people, all newspaper reporters. And so I decided to create a communications office, and the faculty just pounded on me, telling me that I could not use the word marketing. They'd be okay if I created an office of communications, but I could not, under any circumstances, create an office of marketing. Well, a few years later, quietly, the little sign on the door says Office of Marketing, so they kind of got over it. But the logo when I came was UTD, which stands for University of Texas at Dallas. And it was actually one of our business leaders who said, why are you calling yourselves UTD? The word Dallas is an internationally recognized, iconic phrase. Drop the D and start calling yourself Dallas. And it just was 3 letters, UTD, and the marketing team that I hired just came up with the image of the state of Texas, which is also iconic in America. And orange is the color of mostly of the UT system. So they did come up with a logo anyway. But it is interesting that university faculty don't like the idea of marketing, although they're extremely happy to have people come over and tell the story of what they're doing. Right? That's okay. That's all right.
There's been an extraordinary row in the UK about an attempt by Queen Mary University, University of London, to ask its staff to consistently refer to the institution in the same way. And people are ridiculing this edict, saying, oh, you've got to call us this. But consistency of name is actually essential in a global marketplace in terms of, even in rankings, the correct attribution of your research and reputation terms. So it's really interesting to hear that process. But unless there's any more questions, I can tell I'm just keeping you all from the drinks. We're going to I just want to make a few final remarks just to really thank you all. I think I'd like to, in particular, thank Wendy and the Plymouth team for their incredible enthusiasm. The dynamism that they've brought to putting this event on has been absolutely essential. We're extremely grateful to them, and we're grateful, of course, to the sponsors that have helped support us, Thomson Reuters, Blackboard, and ATN, and to Libby for contributing and bringing some of her members here and engaging with the debate. So thank you very much. But most importantly, to yourselves, it's been absolutely fantastic to see you all here to the bitter end on a hot, long day. It's been wonderful engagement. The diversity in the room is fantastic. We want to keep these conversations going. Times Higher Education will play its role. We're going to be reporting on this event. We've been filming it. The video will go online tomorrow. Thomson Reuters are going to produce a white paper. We will share that with you. Everyone here will be sent an electronic copy of the rankings results supplement with some of the debate and opinion pieces from Imran and Dr. Daniel as well, and Wendy. So there'll be lots of follow-up. And I think I also have some breaking news. I think we're extending the drinks to ensure we do get a little bit of time for networking. I think it's 7:45 at the Arcadia pool, so we can keep those conversations going, but we can keep some
6:45
networking and some conversations going. Claire will direct us to the bar at the right time if I've got that wrong. But I'm really, really thrilled about how today's gone. We want to build a legacy around this. It feels like we have created something special together, and I do think it's something Times Higher would like to do every year and take it around the world and try and keep these networks going, keep these connections going, and build a real legacy of similarly minded, forward-looking, thrusting young university leaders, or at least leaders of young universities. And I'm just going to give Wendy the final word, because...
Well, thank you very much, Phil. I wanted just to echo really your thanks to all the distinguished speakers, but also, importantly, to recognise Phil and thank you for the idea about coming together and sharing our experiences. We are going to have drinks and canapes, long-trailed, they will be there. But I do want to give a couple of thanks, one to, obviously, our hosts here at Fontainebleau Hotel, but actually to Claire Margetts, who's at the back there. Claire, thank you for all the efforts to engage with everybody. Thank you so much. To Simon. To Simon, whose first gig, I think, with the Times Higher has been Let's Go to Miami. He's only been 3 weeks in or 4 weeks in, so he's obviously made a great choice. But also to my own head of media and communications, Karen Mason, who's sitting at the front. Thank you to Karen, who's worked tirelessly with Claire to bring this about. I think each of... Thanks. It genuinely has been a great opportunity to co-host this event, and I think each of the speakers has just drawn to us and brought to us some of their unique challenges. And I just kind of captured a few of those. I think from Phil, the sense of focus and strategic priorities and that recognition of quality. There was a real sense of staying in your mission. That really came through. And Vicky called to us about unconventional thinking and fresh thinking and daring to be different. And I was really inspired by that. But Jamil's kind of path to glory was great, as well as his warning about not being complacent. I think we can have drinks and be a bit complacent, and then maybe not complacent tomorrow. But I really liked Steve from KAIST's integrity, the sense of integrity about what you're about, and that sense of ethics. But then as we moved into the research space, and Kern talking about the environment, about creating the environment where people can excel, was, I think, really very strong. And Umran also recognised the importance of the right environment and getting out of your staff's way. So I think if all the university presidents can, assure themselves to get out of their staff's way for a bit, I'm sure that'll be much appreciated. But I really liked Umran's comment, which was that the Times Higher 100 under 50, he said, has liberated us from the dominance of the more established universities. And I hope you feel liberated, not too liberated at the pool party later, but liberated. But then we started to unpack a little bit, and a huge amount of work to do around innovation and impact metrics and that sense of defining an ecosystem. And that's tricky, but it's exactly the challenge I think that we're up for. What also came through was that sense of global partnerships and global mindset. The thing I think we're not agreeing on is the different perspectives around students. Some are talking about young universities, the modern global elite, and taking that top slice of students. Others, York, ourselves, others talked about having an open gate for talent. So I think there's something important there around that social inclusion space. But for me, it's about doing the right thing. All those rankings will catch up with where you are. So I would leave you with a kind of comment about being bold. But to thank you for coming. Let's talk about this one, all the things that we liked and things we didn't like, and let's also, over drinks, talk about the next one and think about the work that happens between now and the next one. So thank you very much. I'll see you all at the reception a little bit later on. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.